This is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins. Well, we are here with the quintessential actress of this stage and so on. And here to introduce her, my co-host, Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
An actress is not even a term that sort of encompasses all that Elizabeth Ashley is. I think of her as a force of nature. I mean, you eat other actors when you're on stage with them sometimes.
Oh, wrong. Oh, bad boy.
You eat hosts.
I knew you would start out.
You knew it start right away.
Cheap like that.
Elizabeth Ashley has been an above-the-title star since 1962 when you were in Take Her, She's Mine, for which you won the Tony Award. Barefoot in the Park, a great revival of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, Agnes of God, and a couple of seasons ago in The Best Man. Elizabeth Ashley is back on Broadway in Enchanted April, playing the crusty Mrs. Graves. And we're very happy to, I'm afraid, to have Elizabeth Ashley with us on Theater Talk tonight.
Honey, why would you be afraid? Oh, come on. You don't want to be a sissy about this. Now just buck up and cough it out.
All right, I'm going to cough it out. Mrs. Graves is played by Joan Plowright in the movie. Kind of an important performance, and it's a great movie. How is this stage play, and how is your performance different from the movie that everyone knows and loves?
Well, first of all, I mean, I always think that film and theater are apples and oranges. I do not see one as an extension of the other. It's sort of like there's football and there's baseball. Okay, they're both, you know, team sports, but other than that, they really don't have much in common. That's sort of how I feel about film and the theater. Now, I remember going to see the film, okay?
You did see it, yeah.
Which was like, what, 8 or 9 years ago or something, and so I might have an attitude about it because there were like 4 women that were like really good friends of mine, and we were going to go off to the movies, and a new Clint Eastwood movie had opened with lots of car crashes and blood and some really good Tech Nines and my kind of movie, you know. And I remember one of my friends who was like a rock and roll chick said, "Oh, I can't see violence," and I, you know, and so we wound up going off to see Enchanted April, you know, and. Now, I am not a chick flick sort of a gal.
How about a masterpiece theater gal?
So I went to see it, and it was lovely and charming and wonderful, and everybody cried, and I remember when I came out of there, sort of saying, okay, but what happened? I mean, the bunch, okay, period was good, and a bunch of women get together and they decide to do this thing, and then we watch them do it. There was no irony, no red herring, no surprise. I mean, and I'm never crazy about things where they tell you what they're going to do, and then you get to watch them do it, and there's no surprise. There's no, I mean, they don't yank your chain or choke you out in any way, you know.
So have you improved on this now?
So what is this? What is your Enchanted April like? Yanking chains, red herrings?
Well, first of all, it is certainly has nothing in common with the chick flick aspects of it, in that we have men, and it is a fairy tale, right? And I don't think anything like that has been done on Broadway in recent memory. And the thing that's wonderful about it is that it is a fairy tale, and it is very beautiful and very much true to the period, but it's a good time show. You're going to have a wonderful time, but unlike most good time shows, you're really not going to feel like a moron when you leave.
Now, we should say that it's about a group of women who have kind of sort of drab lives in England right after World War I.
Okay. I mean, it happens to take place in 1922 in England. However, it's about a group of women who lead very ordinary lives, for the most part, on whatever class or level they come from, which are many. But through circumstance and situation, somehow they come together to go off on what is an unthinkable adventure. I mean, it's just the last thing on earth that would have occurred to anyone, the last thing on earth that anyone would have done. And just, they go off, they decide to do this thing. And you have a very old woman, myself, and you have
In heavy makeup.
Oh, darling, no, it's taking off makeup. I mean, it's just raw meat. It's high time I played someone my own age, don't you think? But, and you have this sort of young, drop-dead, sort of beautiful, aristocratic, and then you have your two quite ordinary, sort of middle-class housewives, you know?
Now, who are these actresses?
Oh, well, you see, now that's our secret weapon, is our cast.
Yes.
We have the cast to die for. Well, first of all, we have the very great Jane Atkinson. And Jane Atkinson has been, I mean, the most brilliant actress for so long, but you know how sometimes, again, through circumstance and situation, it's her turn.
Yeah.
And then with her, the other sort of house is the quite wonderful Molly Ringwald, who couldn't be more different from Jane in like background and experience, but the match is perfect. And then we have a creature that I choose to call the Dagger. I mean, one of the most drop-dead beautiful, sexy, extraordinary. And I mean, I call her the Dagger. Her name is Dagmar, something very Polish that I can't say. That's why she's the Dagger. I mean, I mean, you know, the place where we're rehearsing, there are an awful lot of. Well, I mean, I love it that all men are dogs, you know, but I mean, but they're really outside our rehearsal room. There's a lot of hanging around and kind of panting, you know. From with guys
Why
we
do I
don't
feel
know.
sorry for your press agent, your producer, Jeffrey Richards?
What about him?
The guy among all of these women.
Oh, no. But then, you see, we have three of the most wonderful actors. We have Michael Hayden, who plays a sort of Prince Charming character. And, you know, he was Chance Wayne when I did Sweet Bird of Youth, so I've wallowed in big beds with him. So we know, and he's just, and then we have Michael Comsty. It just doesn't get any better than that. Then we have Danny Gerald, and it doesn't get any better than that.
Now, the question I have for you, now, we have to be honest, we have not seen this show yet because you're still in rehearsal with it.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, though, just thinking of you playing Mrs. Graves, I mean, you have a kind of a, shall we say, sexual dynamism about you that I didn't really see in Joan Plowright.
Darling, you've got to get over that. I don't know. Perhaps I was blessed, cursed by for many years playing those parts where they had to have somebody who could get spraddle-legged in underwear on a bed on a stage.
You did play those
You were one of the most
Yes.
sexiest women who ever walked across a Broadway
you in a
stage.
slip.
Johnny, as the great Jean Moreau said to the rather pompous Mike Wallace at one point, in some sort of, I mean, because he was, oh, you've had all these lovers, are you telling me this? And she said, listen to me. There is a time when a woman, when she is young, she should have made love to every, she should have had every lover, she should have committed every sin, because when one is, you know, on the dark side of 50s, unbecoming. I couldn't agree more, and I'm 63 years old.
But
I
you
mean,
hardly lost the sexuality, the sexual energy that you were always famous for.
But you know,
I mean, you know,
let me tell you something.
Hot under the collar just talking to you right now.
Oh, you're just
And I don't even have a collar.
You only said that because you wanted to ask me something that you think is probably déclassé.
What are you doing
hoping
tonight?
to soften
What
me
are you
up
doing
and it
after the
won't
show?
work. But look, performance energy is very much the same as sexual energy. That's why when Mick Jagger was asked maybe 20 years ago, come on, what's it like when you're up there in this great... And he said, truthfully, he said, oh, it's better than sex.
Is that true?
Well, performance energy comes from the same place that sexual energy does. And, but my character is, see, I am so interested in old women. I've always been interested in old women because our culture is so afraid of them. Why? And I think it's because old women we are the gatherers of all the collective accepted wisdom and experience in the world. And there comes a point when, if you have had every lover, committed every sin, married everyone, had all the children, and all that, when finally you're done, you get to retire from all that. And you do, in some sense, become, in a sexual sense, genderless. You know, I mean, in that your view of life, you lose. I mean, if one is transcended at all, I'm not talking about those poor, sad, mutant creatures out there that have been sawed, sucked, and sewed, and are still trying to recapture something that they lost, that they should have been doing when they were 30 and they're now 50, and it's all sad. But that's it. But no. But there comes a point, and as an artist, it figures where one must be done with vanity and all of the baggage that comes with needing to drag your scent to see what kind of an alpha dog is going to come to the door. You know?
So do you think of yourself now as genderless, as a genderless actress?
I think of myself.
I mean, you know, you were dragging that scent all over the place in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Old woman. In Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, I was in my prime. I was, 34, 35 years old. And I can't ever say I was modest about it. I mean, I put it on the street, I used it for all it was worth. And there comes a time when one should have used it up.
Now, but let me ask you, though, in your life, I mean, you seem to have made peace with this, but does there come a point in...
Peace, it's an embrace.
Yeah, but is there a point, though, with any actress who was, you know, considered a great sex symbol, as you were, where you reach a point where you think, I'm not 35 anymore, I'm not a sex symbol anymore. And is that a devastating thing for an actress to go through, to realize that I can't trail my scent along, as you put it?
I think we are conditioned to believe it is devastating, and I think that in a sort of capitalist, consumer-addicted culture such as ours, we buy into that subliminally. And I think it must never be bought into.
Well, you've embraced middle age beautifully, but you're in an industry where it's hard to get parts. That's a reality outside of your own.
Absolutely.
And so I would think that would be the frustration.
But that is their problem.
Yeah.
See, I mean, I don't mind being poor. I've never been particularly materialistic. I don't need very much. I have a rent-stabilized apartment, and I'm over 60, so they can't throw me out. And I just find that, I'll tell you what's wonderful. When you get to be my age, you can flaunt your character flaws, and you have confidence in that you know a few things. And not only do you know them, you can occasionally teach them, or at least you can put them out there. And I think that as an artist, it becomes really valuable, because then you can push things. I know I did this magnificent production of Glass Menagerie, and I so loved it, because I think maybe that was the first time that I had not had to try and play 15 or 20 years younger than I was.
You were playing the mother in Glass Menagerie.
Well, yeah. Look alert. We're going to send you some books, homework. No, but anyway.
No, but that was the first part you played where you weren't playing, as you said, someone with 15 or 20 years. Was this sort of a transitional role?
Well, no. It was a role that I had promised Tennessee that I would do. And I sort of knew that woman, because Tennessee had always said that my mother was, because I mean, the minute my mother's back was turned, she said, well, you know, she's a man of Wheatfield, she's a man of Wheatfield. But it was wonderful, because I found that I had so much bigger toolbox. Because, I mean, as an actor, our insides and our experience, all of that. I mean, bottom line, that's our toolbox.
And you can be a mess in that part and just be somebody. You don't have to be a pulled together beauty.
And you use it. It's part of what you use.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I find it one of them, I find it perhaps the most rewarding time of my life.
Now?
Yes.
Are you a better actress now than when you were
Well, one would
35?
hope, sure.
Or not better, but a different kind of actress?
Oh, I think so. I think so. I'm certainly have more emotional discipline, and I think you see, the thing I've always so loved about the theater, I love the machine of it. It's like, okay, if you're like a race car driver, right, and you're driving Formula One, I mean, yes, there is that thing. If you are going 100, 200 miles an hour, right? I mean, that's like flying. That's the thrill of it. But you better not get on that track unless you've got the car, unless you know the machine. And I've always been one of those people, as a creative person, where I've always sort of been one of those people with the kind of shotgun shack with siding that has nothing but like old refrigerators and old engine parts and a lot of old cars taken apart and put in what would be the front yard, you know. That's what I love about it. I love the finding which part of the engine, and I think it takes a lot of years
So you don't
to
have the
know what part of, it's very important, I think, when you do a play to know what part of the engine you are. And when you're the shock absorbers, when you are the gear shift, when you're the transmission, you know, when you're the spark plug, you know, I like all of
Can
that.
a young actress, though, be expected to know that, though? I mean,
No.
isn't it a young actress about coming on that stage and being looked at and adored
Well,
and
at
lusted
the
after?
risk of being pompous and arty, which are two things I loathe.
Which we ban on Theater Talk.
Oh, I'm so glad. But I believe in what Stanislavski said more deeply than anything on earth, which is that you have to love the art in yourself, not yourself in the art. And that is always, I think, the battle that every artist, and most particularly performers, have to do hand-to-hand combat with in their minds and their hearts and their souls and in their creative imaginations every day that they live.
Because you hit the ground running. You won a Tony for your first Broadway part. Am I not correct? Take her.
Well, no, not no. I mean, I was sort of did an under five. My Broadway debut in 1959 in a Dory Sherry play called
really?
The Higher Street. The only person that liked it was Eleanor Roosevelt, who was writing for the Post at that time.
But your first big part, Take Her, She's Mine. You won the Tony, and you were very young. Was that intoxicating? I mean, didn't that?
No,
how did you keep your head becoming so successful so quickly? You were the hot actress.
Well, I was the
that
Twinkie
era.
of the moment.
Yes,
There's
you were.
always one. And I was the Twinkie of the moment for that 5 seconds in time. It is overwhelming. The first thing is, my God, I mean, I am not the black sheep. It bears my mother was proud of me, and everybody that ever dicked within my life. Take that! I'm prom queen after all. That lasts about 10 minutes. I was very fortunate in that you must understand George Abbott.
Directed you, yeah, wonderful.
Yes, and Art Carney
Yeah.
was the star of that play.
They knew where the engine parts were.
Oh, you bet. And I am so awfully glad that I got lucky and was the Twinkie of the week and whatever, the new person in town, and they didn't know enough about me to have enough people voting against me, and so, because people always vote against, not for, and that sort of thing. But, I mean, I've been awfully glad over the years that I had that, because there were times when not only was I dead, down, over with, finished, and there were people that that as a matter of principle were going to see to it that I never worked again. I mean, I was the prodigal child of the black sheep, and blah, 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 all of that. And so I was awfully glad it was there, because simply as a marketing tool, now you're talking to somebody that has never had a press agent in my life and has never participated in successfully at all in any of the machinery of career. I mean, I'm pretty good at the work sometimes, but that career thing.
But they
is
must
always...
have tried to slot you in that after you had the success on Broadway, you went
and
to
the Tony Award,
Hollywood, and you were a beautiful woman. I mean, wasn't there a marketing machine sort of ready to create the Liz Ashley brand?
Oh yeah, and it destroyed me. I mean, it's overwhelming. I mean, when people, you know, like the famous sort of, like when Freddie Prinze ate the gun, it was no surprise to me. I wasn't one of those saying, oh, well, I totally understood it. But I have always had, I'm tempted to say a great ability, but I'm not sure that's true. But I've always known when all else fails in life, and when, I mean, you are, with despondency and despair and there's no hope and you can, you know, just leave town. Buy a ticket to some place where you do not speak the language, that you've never been, and just wander the world. It's always worked for me.
All right, it's Enchanted April at the Belasco Theater.
The Belasco Theater.
Starring the incredibly sexy, still Elizabeth Ashley as Mrs. I was going to say Mrs. Krusty, but
no, Mrs. Graves.
Mrs.
Yes.
Graves, all right.
No, she's a Victorian.
Liz Ashley, thanks for being our guest tonight on Theater Talk.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. I like both you guys.
Thank you.
I worked as an apprentice, really, with Frank Lesser, and Abe Burrows, and Fuhr and Martin, and George Kaufman. And they knew exactly what they were. They wrote the book on this. I mean, not the book, but the book. They also wrote the book. They also wrote the book. But they really knew what was, and they spelled things out, and they were a college course. They were wonderful. One, individuals are always wrong. Collectively, they're always right. An audience is always right. Individuals will come up and say, you know, this doesn't work or that, I think change that. They've only seen it once. First of all, most of them are not in the profession, so they don't know. Secondly, they've only seen it once. That's true about professionals too. You can have somebody come to somebody you admire a lot, and they'll say, oh, this, that, and the other, but they've only seen it once. And that's very hard to parse a show when you've seen it only once. But the audience collectively,
never wrong.
Never wrong. You can get a house that's deader than others, but you can tell.
Right.
The coughing starts. Getting a sure sign, incidentally. It's hard but when you're experienced, you can see it. Is when they get up and walk out. That's a sure sign that things aren't going well.
That's a good one that they don't like it.
Yes, I had a show once in Detroit.
But you have to be sensitive to that, right?
I was out of town in Detroit, and if you stood in the aisle, you could have been trampled to death. But the fact was that the audience tells you. Now, if you start hearing things, now let's amend the rule about they're always wrong, the individuals. If you start to hear the same thing over and over, listen to that. In other words, if you hear it at least 3 times, the same thing. Like if someone says, gee, I found the first act too long. Well, you know it's too long, or whatever. But where? And you know, they'll say, that doesn't help me. I know it's too long. You always know. You're always too long. Right. All of show business is 20 minutes too long.
I say vote yes, vote yes, vote for independence. Say, someone open up a window. I say vote yes, sit down, John. Vote for independence. Say, someone open up a window. No, 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 too many fines. Yes, too many fines, but it's hard as hell. Oh, for God's sake, John, sit down! Good God, consider yourselves fortunate that you have John Adams to abuse. For no sane man would tolerate it. John, you're a fool. We've heard this before. Now, for God's sake, John, sit down. I say vote yes. No. Vote yes. No. Vote for independence. Say. Someone gonna open up a window. I say vote yes. Sit down, John. Vote for independence. Say. Will someone shut that man up? Never. Never.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Friedrich Loewe Foundation, the Corey and Bob Dinelli Charitable Fund, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, and public funds from the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
Playbill Online is the official website of Theater Talk and the home of the Playbill Club, providing information and opportunities for theater lovers. We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.